Big Muskie did not drive. It walked. 13,500 tons of American steel, standing nearly 22 stories tall, lifting itself off the Ohio dirt on two steel shoes the size of tennis courts, and setting itself back down again, one slow stride at a time. It took 2 years to fabricate the pieces, and another 2 years to bolt them together on site, because no road and no rail car in the country could carry the finished machine. 340 rail cars, 260 trucks, 200,000 man-hours of assembly, out in a field, in the wind and the mud. When it was finished in 1969, it was the largest machine that had ever moved on land. It still is. The only things larger that can still move under their own power are aircraft carriers. It ran on electricity, 13,800 volts, fed into a machine that could pull 62,600 horsepower at peak. The men who worked on it will tell you it drew roughly 2/3 of the electricity of Las Vegas. And then there is the bucket. 220 cubic yards. You could park 2 Greyhound buses inside it, side by side, and still have room to walk around them. Every time that bucket came up loaded, it carried 325 tons of Ohio in a single bite. That is not per hour, that is per bite. Over 22 years of digging, Big Muskie moved more than 600 million cubic yards of earth. The Panama Canal, the project that bankrupted a French company and killed thousands of men, moved about half of that. Stop and think about that for a second. One machine, one crew of 7, twice the Panama Canal. Now here is the part that should bother you. In 1999, they cut it up. Cutting torches, explosives on the 5-inch cables, and scrap trucks hauling it out by the load. The largest machine America ever built was reduced to tonnage and sold for the price of steel. The only piece that survives is the bucket. It sits in a park in Morgan County, Ohio, off a 2-lane road, where families pull over and children climb up inside it, while their parents stand there quietly, doing the math on what used to be attached to the other end. If a machine like that, being cut up for scrap, hits you the way it hits me, subscribe. Because remembering these giants is the whole reason this channel exists. To understand why it died, you have to understand who built it. Bucyrus started in 1880 in the town of Bucyrus, Ohio, and moved north to South Milwaukee, Wisconsin in 1893. It built steam shovels. When America went to Panama to cut a canal through a mountain range, 77 of the 102 steam shovels that did the digging came from Bucyrus. In 1927, it swallowed the Erie Steam Shovel Company and became Bucyrus Erie. In Marion, Ohio, a rival called Marion Power Shovel built the same kind of machine and hated them for it. For most of a century, those two companies fought each other for the title of biggest, and the world got bigger because of it. Between them, they built the shovels that dug the canals, cut the highways, stripped the coal, and moved the earth for the dams that lit up half the country. This was an American monopoly, but not on cleverness or on price. It was a monopoly on sheer size. Nobody else on Earth was building rope machines this large, and nobody else needed to, because America had something the rest of the world did not. Enormous, flat, shallow coal seams, and utilities willing to sign 30-year contracts to burn what came out of them. That is the economic engine sitting underneath Big Muskie. A machine like that only makes sense if you know, with something close to certainty, that you will still be stripping the same field 40 years from now. It is not really a machine. It is a bet on the next 4 decades. And in 1990, America stopped making that bet. The Clean Air Act amendments of that year went after sulfur. The coal buried under Big Muskie was high-sulfur Ohio coal, and almost overnight, the power plants that had been burning it could not or would not. The math flipped. By January of 1991, it cost more to run Big Muskie than the coal it uncovered was worth, and the biggest machine on Earth was parked. It sat there for 8 years, idle, rusting quietly above the ground it had already dug. Here is why that matters. Big Muskie was not beaten by a better machine. It was beaten by a change in what America was willing to burn. The better machines came for the rest of them. To see how, you have to understand how a walking dragline actually works, because it is not an excavator in any sense you would recognize. A hydraulic excavator digs by force. Rams push, the stick curls, the bucket bites into the bank. A dragline has none of that. No hydraulics in the digging end at all, just a boom and rope. On Big Muskie, wire rope 5 inches thick. The bucket hangs free on the hoist ropes, out at the end of a boom over 300 feet long. The operator drops it, then hauls it back on the drag rope, and the bucket fills the way your hand fills a scoop of gravel, by dragging through the material under its own dead weight. Then, the hoist rope takes the load, the house swings, hundreds of tons of steel and dirt come around in a slow arc, and the operator trips the bucket out over the spoil pile and starts over. On a good machine, that cycle takes less than a minute, all day, all night. The walking is stranger still. There are no tracks. Tracks that size would tear themselves apart under the weight. Instead, the machine sits on a round steel tub, and 2 enormous shoes on either side ride on eccentric cams. The cams rotate, the shoes come down, the tub lifts clear of the ground, the whole machine shifts back a few feet, and the tub settles again. That is one step. That is how 13,500 tons crosses a county. Dave Bailey was one of the electricians, a McConnellsville man. He worked on Big Muskie for a decade, and he was on it the last day it ever ran. 7 men made the machine work. An operator, 2 oilers, 2 dozer men, a welder, and an electrician. They ran 364 days a year, off only on Christmas. When the machine was down, they climbed the boom to check the grease lines, hundreds of feet up in the wind, because a dry bearing on a machine like that is not a repair. It is a catastrophe. So why did the dragline lose? Because size is a trap. The tub that made Big Muskie stable also meant it needed flat, level, stable ground beneath it, and it could not work over blasted rock the way smaller machines could. It could not be moved. It could not be sold. It could only sit there and be enormous. And while it sat, engineers in Germany and Japan were finishing machines that could do almost nothing Big Muskie could do, and everything the mining business actually needed. Look at the ultra-class hydraulic excavators today. The Liebherr R9800 out of Germany, the Komatsu PC8000, the Hitachi EX8000 out of Japan, roughly 800 tons apiece, 4,000 horsepower, buckets in the range of 55 cubic yards. Understand what that number means. Big Muskie's bucket was 220 cubic yards. The largest hydraulic mining excavator on Earth today swings a bucket about a quarter that size. These machines never outmuscled the dragline. Nothing has ever outmuscled the dragline. They outflexed it. A hydraulic shovel arrives on trucks in modules and is assembled in weeks. It can be financed. It can be resold to another mine when the coal runs out. It loads haul trucks, which means the pit can be any shape the geology demands, and when the seam goes thin, you are not left with 13,000 tons of stranded steel sitting on your balance sheet. That was the real fight. Flexibility against scale. And once American coal started shrinking, flexibility won every single time. Then came the part that still stings in Wisconsin. On July 8, 2011, Caterpillar completed its purchase of Bucyrus International for roughly $8.8 billion. Cat wanted the mining line, and Cat got it. The Bucyrus name, 131 years old, was retired. The machines were repainted yellow. 5 years later, in 2016, production at the South Milwaukee plant stopped. 123 years of continuous manufacturing on that ground finished. At its height, that single plant employed more than 2,400 people, in a town where sons followed fathers and grandfathers through the same gate, and it was not alone. A few miles up the lakefront sat Harnischfeger, later known as Joy Global, maker of the P&H shovels and draglines that were Bucyrus's only serious rival. In 2017, Komatsu bought them for $3.7 billion. So both of the great American rope machine houses, the 2 companies that built the largest moving objects on the planet, are now run from Peoria and from Tokyo. Neither one builds anything in the town that made it, and here is what makes it worse. Caterpillar's biggest hydraulic mining shovel, the 6090, the machine routinely called the largest excavator in the world, is not an American design at all. It began life as the RH400, drawn up in 1997 by O&K in Dortmund, Germany. It passed to Terex, then to Bucyrus, then to Caterpillar. It got a yellow paint job. Production moved to Indonesia. The biggest digging machine, wearing Caterpillar colors, is a German machine, built in Asia. Meanwhile, the country that built Big Muskie went from 883,000 coal miners in 1923 to about 44,000 today. American coal production peaked in 2008 at more than 1.1 billion tons. By 2023, it was less than half of that. The draglines are not entirely gone. A few dozen still walk in Wyoming's Powder River Basin and out in the Texas lignite fields, and Caterpillar and Komatsu still hold the drawings. But nobody is ordering new Titans anymore. When the last of them stops walking, there will be no ceremony. Which brings us back to the bucket. It sits in Miners Memorial Park, on reclaimed ground in Morgan County, Ohio. 240 tons of steel. The chain links weigh close to 1,000 pounds each. You can walk up the ramp and stand inside it, under the lip, and look up, and it feels less like machinery than like the rib cage of something that used to be alive. Around it, the land Big Muskie tore open has healed. 10,000 acres of it became a conservation park called the Wilds, and there are rhinos and giraffes grazing out there now, on ground a dragline dug up and then carefully put back. And I am not sure about you, but I keep circling one detail. We saved the bucket. We could not save the machine. There were plans, there were petitions, there was talk of a museum, of leaving just one of them standing, so that somebody's grandson could walk up to it someday and understand what this country was once willing to build. The numbers never worked. The will was never there. And so a nation that spent $25 million in 1969 to build the largest object that ever moved across land spent 1999 cutting it into pieces small enough to fit on a truck. Nobody beat the American dragline. We simply decided it was worth more as scrap. And all that is left of it is a bucket in a field, big enough to stand inside, quiet enough to hear the wind move through the steel, waiting for someone to walk up and ask what used to be attached to the other end.